We always notice just a little too late, as the cringeworthy, slow-mo sight of a child about to get hurt unravels in front of our eyes. I once saw Joseph Burlington pull a squash door shut while he held the inside of the door jamb with his other hand. His tiny, soft fingers absorbed the 100-pound glass door as if he had triggered a mousetrap. It was almost as painful to watch as it was for poor Joseph to experience. As a 5-year-old, I was a prodigy golfer and needed to help Harrison get his putting swing down. So, naturally, I got behind him, reached around his back, and practiced the swing with him, just like my mom had done for me. After one gentle practice, I stepped back and cracked a gentle smile towards my mom's camera. Little did I know, the silence that is so often coupled with picture-taking was just the calm before the storm. Harrison, the violent rebel that he is, disregarded my lesson, took the putter back like a lumberjack, twisting his tiny body with all 50 pounds of untamed power. He proceeded to deliver the putter to the back of my head on the follow-through, leaving a permanent dent in my soft skull. Harrison and I shared many conflicts as children. We tortured each other and our parents. However, my childhood wrestling matches with my brother can't be blamed on just one of us, although some would disagree. In my mind, we were a perfect duo of troublemaking children. He would instigate a fight, and I would happily take his bait. Although his version of winning wasn't actually winning the physical part, he just loved hugging my dad's leg as I was being sent to my room. He always showed me his smug little smile, just barely visible through the swollen, teary eyes. Our fighting never really stopped or even slowed, but was always defined by my competitive attitude and his naturally greater intelligence. Surviving into our teenage years, the once harmless childhood tussles turned into bouts of fists and became a more common occurrence. This worried my parents slightly, as maturity seemed to elude us despite our age. At this time, my youngest brother, Mason, had just turned 6, which in my family was the age that he became a man. I was very close with Mason right from the start, and as the oldest, I've always felt very protective of him. Harrison saw Mason as an opportunity. An opportunity to know what it was like to sit on someone's chest with your knees pinned on their arms, muffling their screams with your hands. He seized the opportunity and named Mason his personal stress relief ball. From there, my relationship with Mason was formed over the punishment of Harrison for his crimes against Mason. Habeas corpus was out of the question. Our friendship grew along with the isolation of Harrison. My siblings and I had created a perfectly flawed environment of festering stress. Our home became a regular habitat for yelling, fighting, crying, and their well-deserved consequences. Mom could barely stand it. For only that single hour every night before my dad got home, we were demonic. Dad was the figure of fear in our eyes, and his stern talks were just about the equivalent of mental waterboarding. "Why don't we go and have a chat?" he would say, eclipsing our hope of staying up late that night. These conversations were always filled with the unanswerable question of, "Why are you hurting your brother?" And my somber response was always, "I don't know." Ending with a final, "Okay, bedtime," a horrible word that always made me cry. I did a lot of damage to my mother and brother during this time, and it was my own fault that it was impossible to live with me. During my first 9th grade year, pre-ADD diagnosis, I struggled in school. I never did homework and was spoon-fed many generous C's in school. My parents are both abnormally intelligent people and knew my ability exceeded my performance. My mother's intense passion for her children placed her in the impossible situation of trying to help me. She offered every night to help with my work, but I demanded that she left me alone with my door shut. I did nothing academically, and I did nothing to aid her peace of mind. In the mornings, she would wake me up, and I would dive right back into bed. I was the sole reason for Harrison and my 76 late appearances to school that year. During this time, the weight of my poor behavior never left my mother's shoulders. Morning and night became a continuous looping nightmare of yelling and extreme sloth. I had constructed the ultimate crucible of hot, overflowing stress. Multiple times I brought my mother to tears, and in my brother's perpetually teary eyes, I was ruining the family. He once said to me, and I quote, "Hey, Clayton, you suck, man." My dad's infamous chats became an almost nightly occurrence of his pleas for me to stop the grand torture I had cursed my mother with. And in my adolescence, I failed to keep my seemingly automated promise to stop. There was one conversation I will remember forever. It was towards the end of my last year at home. My father said to me, "You are destroying your mother and this house. You may not live here if this doesn't change." My eyes exploded with tears. Shortly after this conversation, a therapist was recommended to my mother for troubled adolescents. I was confused, but immediately thought about how to outsmart my therapist. I came up with clever ways to receive as little counseling as possible. When I entered his office for the first time, he was awkwardly friendly, smiling way too wide and forcing his eyes out of his head. I sat down, played with magnets on a coffee table in front of me, and just like that, I had received a prescription to Concerta and Ritalin, two very powerful ADD medications. At the time, I hated my doctor because I had to. I had to find a way to push back against the adults in my life. Although the meds really helped, even though I hated them, I was more relaxed and much more focused. It helped my grades and dulled my emotions at home. It was, at first, surreal, being able to take a pill and be a completely new and endlessly more pleasant person. 2 weeks later, middle school was over, and summer relieved a lot of the pent-up stress. 3 months later, I was at Brooks, in a newly unfamiliar and rather scary place. My new home was Thorn, the house of the scariest bearded men on this earth. Without my family around at all, I felt in debt to them. Having been such a problem at home, they still fought and paid for my entrance to a top prep school. In high school, the effort that you give has a direct correlation to the relationships that you create. My teachers didn't see much from me in my first year, and I think the excitement of being away from home made it hard to study, coupled with the fact that I was rooming with Harry, of course. When I did go home that first year, I was a great kid, helping with any chore I could, being not only kind, but also generous with my siblings. My parents were happy to see my behavior shift was headed in the right direction. My time away was the perfect cure to my painful relationships at home. I learned why I had to fight for myself and why it was really important to try in school. My life revolved around the relationships I had made and the ones that I had failed to make strong enough. Everything shaped whom I was and where I was headed. Without those long, harsh talks with my father, I would be a far less considerate and thoughtful person. The friends I made early during my first weeks in Thorn have been more than some of the most important people in my life, and they've had an extremely positive impact on me. The next year, my brother Harrison was deciding which high school to attend. My parents politely asked me if I would have him come to Brooks with me. The younger version of myself would have been totally against the idea, and my parents were definitely hesitant to put him alone with me. I told my family that I would love to go to school with Harrison, and because of that choice, you are all blessed with his presence today. During our first year as brothers away from home, we became much closer. And in our second year together, he moved into Thorne, and we became better friends than we ever were in the same house. I'm happy to say that our relationship has only strengthened throughout our time at Brooks, and it saddens me to think that I won't have him with me next year. With regards to the putter incident, he cried more than I did on that day, and that speaks to his kind-hearted character that he has always embodied, even as a child. As for my mother and I, Brooks has cured my meanness towards her. We now foster a much more loving and powerful relationship. It's not always two people that aren't meant to be together, but so many things pull situations in different directions. And sometimes forcing the puzzle pieces together doesn't work. You just have to keep searching for the right piece in the right place and at the right time. In my life, Brooks has been the first corner of the puzzle. Now it only gets easier as you build on the relationships you've created and keep adding on to the bigger picture. I can finally say that my family has faith in me now, which I truly deserve. Thank you.